Do you realise that one of the reasons you hear songs on the radio and see them on the telly is because they've been successful on the charts here or somewhere else in the world? Mark pokes his nose behind the New Zealand singles charts.
In the 1950s, it wasn't unusual for a New Zealand #1 single to sell in excess of 80,000 copies. In 1989, U2 and Madonna would be lucky to sell a tenth of that number. Even over the last 5 years, single sales in Australia, for example, have declined from 24 to a mere 15% of the total record market. Given that decline, should radio and television programmers in this country be paying so much attention to the chart? And has it merely become a soft target for record industry hype? I mean, how does a song get to #1? Do you think the charts are rigged?
Yeah, possibly. Like, you hear a song on the radio you like, and they keep playing it until you get sick of it, and they just play the songs that they think will get to the top, or they want to put to the top.
The impact that Ready to Roll had on the following week's chart was always great. I mean, a new release clip played on RTR would chart normally 1 or 2 weeks later.
The chart is very relevant to RTR Countdown, even though the sales of singles has dropped quite substantially in the last few years. It is the only true indication that we have of what the public are buying and what they want to listen to.
I didn't really think that RTR in itself could actually make the songs hits, although we played videos and they became hits. There were other factors involved. Radio stations played the key factor in my view. They followed up.
As a commercial radio station, we use sales charts primarily as a tool, one of many tools we use to compile a playlist at the end of the day. We can't use it exclusively because of the very nature of a sales chart and how it's constructed and how it's made up. We just can't. Radio stations rely on a thing called mass appealability. In other words, songs have to work well in any given market. Sales charts are national charts. Okay, it's a picture of what's working around the country, predominantly in Auckland because of the sheer numbers.
Singles charts, for example, represent very much the young people in that there is a lot of disco on singles charts. 89 FM's audience doesn't necessarily want walls of back-to-back disco. So we literally go and ask the public what they want to hear, and we play it for them.
Well, as a student radio station, we feel that the charts have no use to us whatsoever because the charts cater for the mainstream public out there, whereas we cater for the alternative scene, and so we just take no notice of it at all, really.
What about the local independent record companies? How important is the New Zealand singles chart to them, given the low volume of records actually sold?
We've been involved with this artist before. We see a future for them. We see the possibility of overseas success, and we recognise that success in our own local market is important to get it sold overseas. In these instances, yes, the charts become important, not so much as a sales tool, but as something to show overseas people, and it does give the artist a certain satisfaction.
Do you think the charts are rigged?
Sometimes it seems like they might be, but I don't know.
I have to admit that there have been times when I have been a little bit sceptical about various things that have appeared in the chart. There have been occasions when a very strange band or artist has suddenly entered the chart very high, or in fact gone straight into #1 and sat there for many weeks when, talking to the people out there, no one really appeared to be either buying the record or really into the artist. And whether that had anything to do with the single being on sale for 50 cents, I wouldn't like to say.
What Mandy Toogood is referring to is the record company practice of discounting singles to retailers, who then either sell them cheaply or give them away.
If there was a store giving away John Mellencamp singles, it may well not have even been reported to the chart compiling people. So I really couldn't say whether that affected the chart or not. Specifically on the John Mellencamp chart placing of #1 on Pop Singer, I believe that as every major radio station in the country was playing the song for 3 weeks before that chart was achieved, and that we had very significant video exposure for the song, that probably had more effect on the chart placement.
There are many legends about which songs bought their way in. What do the people who compile the chart do about it? The chart is compiled every Tuesday afternoon from record store sheets usually filled in Monday mornings. About 150 shops participate, but only 2/3 of those are chosen at random for any week's chart. Anything unusual appearing in the chart is investigated by checking with the retailers involved, the record companies, and using the record publication staff gut instinct.
As an example, in June 1988, the remix of Blue Monday 88 by New Order came into the charts at #1 first weekend, and we checked it out, and the sales were genuine. The record company had shipped enough copies, and the retailers had sold it nationwide. It was just that, you know, people knew it was coming out, and they went out and they bought it.
The future of the chart I'd like to see more instantaneous, not so much on a weekly basis, but on a daily basis. We're putting in a point-of-sale system in 1990 or thereabouts, and from there we'll be able to have a chart virtually on a daily basis.
Perhaps every 4 weeks, perhaps 4 different categories of music having their own chart, so that not only is the pop mass music level reflected in the charts, but people who may be particularly interested in, let's say heavy metal music, just as an example, people may be able to once a month go to their chart and see that Poison's the biggest selling record, which would appear on the main chart, but they would also see that a band like, let's say, Slayer, who is not on the main chart, may be the 7th best selling heavy metal record. And the metal fans would be interested, I think, in a chart like this.
What we'd like to see is an independent top 10, like an alternative countdown, whereby all the student radio stations get together. Each radio station compiles a local top 10, and all that information is compiled into one national top 10. And Auckland Campus Radio at the moment, they're trying to get that underway. And we see that as a much more valuable source of information for our listeners.
So that's how a record gets from here to there, to #1 on RTR Countdown. Now, bear in mind, you don't have to be a member of the Recording Industry Association to get your latest release listed on these sheets. Now, despite the marketing, the video exposure, or the retailer discount, perhaps Peter Blake sums it up best.
I think, basically the essence of the chart is still the same, though. It takes a song to actually make it onto the chart, and I think that's the way it always was and the way it'll always be.